What happens when a man at the top of his game, someone with everything one could ever dream of, decides to step down from his high office chair, trade his fancy suit for a simple uniform, and work as a cashier in his own store? What happens when the boss, who has never seen the world through the eyes of his employees, decides to uncover the truths, secrets, and stories they keep hidden? Let's dive in and find out how the life of George Finley, the man behind a multi-million-dollar retail empire, was changed forever after he walked in the shoes of the very people he once only saw from behind a desk. George Finley had always prided himself on building his company from the ground up. With his sharp mind, dedication, and ability to connect the dots like no one else, he turned his small retail store into a nationwide brand. Now, with dozens of stores across the country and millions in the bank, he had achieved everything most people could only dream of. But somewhere along the way, something was missing. His life felt out of touch with the world he had worked so hard to create. For years, George had been attending board meetings, negotiating deals, and managing the company's future. He spoke to his managers, but it was never quite the same. He never got the chance to hear the stories of the workers at the front lines, the ones who greeted customers, handled complaints, and made the stores run smoothly. The ones who helped the business grow without ever being seen. George had no idea what it was really like for them. One day, during a routine meeting, George had a thought that would change everything. What if he could go undercover, work alongside his employees, and experience their world firsthand? He didn't want to just hear about their struggles or the challenges they faced. He wanted to live them. And so, he made a decision. He would step down from his CEO position, trade his designer clothes for the store's employee uniform, and become just another cashier in his own store for a week. He would walk the aisles, help customers, and see what life was really like for his employees. With everything in place, George set out to transform his appearance. He changed his clothes, altered his identity slightly, and even adopted a new name, Riley Thompson. For this week, George Finley was gone. Riley was a man just looking for work. The plan was set. The truth was waiting. The first day was uncomfortable, to say the least. As George walked into the store wearing his new uniform, he was immediately struck by how different everything felt. The bright fluorescent lights above, the sound of the cash register ringing, and the steady hum of the air conditioning, all of it felt so different from the corporate world he was used to. But he pushed aside his discomfort. He was here to learn. Riley's first shift was at a small neighborhood store in the heart of the city. It was bustling with customers, and his job as a cashier seemed simple enough. But as the hours went by, George began to notice the small things. He saw how hard the workers were hustling, trying to keep up with long lines and impatient customers. The store was always busy, and even though everyone tried to stay calm and polite, there was an underlying tension in the air. George met a young man named Josh, who was working his first shift as a cashier. Josh had a nervous smile but seemed eager to do his job well. George noticed the way Josh's hands shook slightly as he scanned items, how his eyes would dart nervously between customers. It didn't take long for George to strike up a conversation with him. "Long day?" George asked, trying to sound casual. Josh nodded. "It's always busy here, man, but I need the money, so, yeah, just trying to get through." George could feel the weight of those words. Josh wasn't just working for a paycheck. He was working to survive, to make ends meet. He was sacrificing his peace for a future he couldn't quite see yet. As the day wore on, George found himself standing the cash register, ringing up customers, and overhearing bits of conversations. He heard stories about the store's poor working conditions, long hours, low pay, and lack of appreciation. He heard customers complain about the prices and how certain items were always out of stock. But then, there were also moments that struck George deeply, moments that he hadn't expected. A man in his late 40s, a regular at the store, came up to George's register with a small bag of groceries. He was quiet, but his eyes were tired and his movements were slow. As George scanned the items, the man spoke. "You know, you never really think about the people working behind the counter," he said. "It's always about what I need and how quick I can get it. But I'm sorry if I've been rude to anyone here. George looked up, surprised. Why would you say that? The man sighed. I've been coming here for years, and I've always rushed through. Never really paid attention to the folks doing the work. It's tough, huh? I can tell you guys are working hard. We should be grateful for that. His words hit George harder than he expected. It was a small exchange, but it spoke volumes. How many customers had brushed past the staff without ever giving them a second thought? How many times had George done the same himself? He never realized the toll it took on the workers, how they were often invisible to those they served. The next day, George moved to another store, hoping for a different experience. This time, he met a man named Frank, who had been working at the store for over 20 years. Frank was an older gentleman, quiet but kind. He showed George the ropes, helping him get used to the pace of the work. But what struck George most about Frank wasn't just his dedication or his knowledge of the job, it was the look in his eyes. Frank's face was lined with age, but there was a sadness behind his smile. When George asked him about his day, Frank opened up, revealing a deeper truth. I've been doing this for years," Frank said softly. "But every day feels the same. I used to have dreams, but they slowly faded away. I'm just here now, for the paycheck, for the people I meet, but it's hard to see a way out when you've been stuck in the same place for so long." George couldn't help but feel a wave of guilt wash over him. Frank wasn't just another worker. He was a man who had poured his heart and soul into a company that never saw him as anything more than an employee. His dreams had faded, and George had never even noticed. As the week went on, George began to see the world through the eyes of his employees. He felt their exhaustion, their frustration, and their resilience. He saw how the company he had built, the empire he had created, wasn't as perfect as he once thought. The workers weren't just there to serve. They were human beings with lives outside the store, with hopes, dreams, and struggles. On the last day of his undercover experience, George found himself standing in front of the store, watching the employees clock out for the day. He had seen so much, learned so much, and felt so much in the past week. It was time to reveal the truth. The following week, George, as himself, returned to the store, this time with a new perspective. He gathered the employees in the break room, his heart pounding with anticipation. As they looked at him with curiosity, he smiled. "I've been working alongside you all this past week," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I've seen things from your point of view, and I want to apologize. I didn't understand. I didn't know what you were going through, but I do now." He paused for a moment, looking each of them in the eye. "We're going to make changes. We're going to make things better for you. You deserve more than just a paycheck. You deserve respect, and I promise I will make sure that happens." George Finley's life changed that week. He had gone from being a distant boss to being a leader who truly understood his employees. The company made significant changes in the way it treated its workers. Better pay, better benefits, and a true culture of appreciation. George never forgot the lessons he learned during those 5 days, and every time he walked into one of his stores, he remembered the people who made it all possible. In the end, the greatest revelation wasn't about how his employees worked, it was about how they lived, and that was a truth worth uncovering. In the end, it's not the money or the title that matters, it's the people we touch, the lives we change, and the difference we make in the world. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.